somebody called a plumber. So you're just like me. You got a Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep vehicle. It's late 90s, all the way up to brand new. And you drive it every single day. But then one day you look on the ground and you find out, hey, there's a couple drops of red transmission fluid on the ground. And you go, oh well, no big deal. I don't really have time to take it to the shop right now, and I'll just keep topping it up. It won't be a big deal. So this is kind of what today's video is about. Why you don't do that. These cars are smarter than you think. So in the late 90s, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Mopar vehicles started developing this thing called adaptive transmissions. And this particular vehicle I'm showing you today actually has one. I'm kind of focusing on one thing called CVI values, or clutch volume index values. And what those are is your computer for the transmission actually monitors how much pressure and how much fluid it actually takes to apply each gear and shift it smoothly. So the idea behind that is if you're, a grandpa and you're driving to the supermarket and you don't go very fast and you have, just, subtle gear changes, you don't accelerate too fast, it's going to be a bit of a softer shift. But if you're a hot rodder and you're putting the pedal down all the time and you need a harder shift, well, your car's going to adapt to how you drive and it's going to shift properly. Or it's also going to make up for transmission wear in the long term as well. So from the start of the transmission's life all the way till the bitter end of its life, it's going to shift virtually the same. Actually very smart on Chrysler's part. Chrysler's actually not the only one that does that. GM's starting to do that as well on their newer vehicles. But Chrysler, I think, was one of the first ones to do it. So, let's look a little bit further into it. The important thing about the clutch volume index is that I really want to tell you guys is when you think you have your fluid topped up all the time and you think you have it in the safe zone and it just happens to drop down into the add zone just for a little bit, just enough of a ride that your computer goes, oh, there's no fluid that's coming through here now. I need to jack up the pressures to make sure this transmission shifts the same. And it raises these values to such a high level that all of a sudden you're having these rough shifts, or they're really jerky, or it jolts the whole car, and it actually creates an uncomfortable ride while you're driving. You mostly notice this when you're slowing down and you're doing probably 20 kilometers an hour and you're just slowing down to a stop sign or a red light, and or you're going to pass somebody on the highway and let's say you're doing 60, and all of a sudden you put the pedal down and it does a quick downshift into the passing gear. It'll be quite a jerk on a downshift. And I've actually test drove a vehicle that had that problem. I actually bought that vehicle for really cheap, that vehicle I test drove. And it was a 2002 Sebring, just like this. And you know what the problem was? It was just a leaky transmission cooler line. And that was it. And the guy that sold me it, he's like, yeah, the shop told me I needed to replace my transmission and it's going to cost me $3,000. And I laughed at him and I said, that's probably not what's wrong with it. You probably just need to, take it in and get a relearn done. So as a normal consumer that owns one of these vehicles that has these adaptive transmissions, you can't actually reset it once it changes the values. You either have to drive it for a period of, I don't know, say 3,000 kilometers before it slowly adapts back to the way that the transmission should be. But in that time, if you've run your transmission so low on fluid, it's actually going to damage your transmission by shifting so hard. So really the only solution is to take it into the dealership or your repair facility and have them do a transmission relearn procedure with a scan tool. Okay, so what I'm showing you here are these numbers here. These are actually the shifting pressures for the transmission on the Chrysler Sebrings. And they have to be within those ranges on your scan tool in order for your transmission to be considered normal and shifting correctly. And here's a reading from my scan tool on my Chrysler Sebring, that red one I was just showing you. These are all within normal ranges, and that's considered perfect. And that transmission does actually shift absolutely smoothly. And here's actually the reading off of an '02 Chrysler Sebring, where it did have quite a jolt when you were slowing down or trying to pass somebody. So you'll notice the UD clutch volume index, which is called the underdrive, is at 95. That is really high, because as you see there, it's supposed to be 24 to 70. So it's way above. And boy, you felt that transmission shift. So I guess I want to say that the moral of the story is, if you have one of these vehicles, you want to keep your transmission fluid topped up, and if you see any leaks, you get it fixed immediately and you don't continue to drive it. Because if you do, you are taking it to the shop to get it fixed, and I promise you that, unless you got a $2,000 scan tool just laying in your drawer.